The following is a paid program for Principal Preservation Services, LLC.
Here's what's coming up on Retirement Reality Roadmap with Mike Koyanen.
The fact is, they're not getting the options where they're at. They're not getting the options in their 401k plans, employer-sponsored plans. They're not getting the options from their advisor who just sold them a pile of investments 10, 12 years ago and seen them twice, right? The key is you need to work with somebody who does planning and can hold your hand through this process. It's typically 9 out of 10 are not investing appropriately for their risk score. And even if they are at the same risk score they should be investing in, what we're finding is their rate of returns are not something to be proud of.
Assuming you took a 30-year mortgage out, you're now on the back end of the amortization schedule. You paid your interest front-loaded on the first 15 years. You're now on the back end of the 15 years paying mainly principal. So at this point, to pay off your mortgage, you're letting the bank win.
So when we look at inflation, just a couple years ago, it was around 8%. And if you're making 3% at the bank today, or maybe 4%, you're losing money. You're losing 4%. You have $100,000, you just lost $4,000.
And now, the host of Retirement Reality Roadmap.
Hi, and welcome to this week's show.
We have 30 minutes of great information designed just for you.
Don't go anywhere. The show starts right now.
Hi, and welcome to this week's Ask the Advisor. Were you the Twin Cities area? Email your questions into us, and we answer them right here on the show. Guys, I've got some great questions this week. Right. Mike, I will begin with you. And my first question is from Barb from Cottage Grove, and she writes, Mike, I own a business here in Minneapolis, and I'm ready to start planning the transition to my kids. I know that as a business owner, there are some rules in the tax code that can help us with some advanced planning and tax reduction strategies. Does your advisory firm do this sort of work? Do you work with CPAs and attorneys?
First of all, Barb, thank you. And we do work with CPAs and attorneys, and that's really where you want to start. And when you're working with a CPA and attorney, you want to work with somebody who has that experience. That's their specialty. There's a few attorneys in our area that we actually refer to where they have specialists in those areas. So when you're making that transition, you need the buy-sell agreements. Everything needs to be documented. Even those family members that might think it's a quick handshake, no, you need to have everything documented in very clear, precise language. So I would recommend that. We also work with part of our compliance department, a selling business. So even you need to have some documentation put together for selling. We have a group there that will handle the compliance and put the paperwork together and work with both parties to make sure it's a fair and honest deal.
And it's important for the financial advisor to be a part of that with the CPA and the attorney, yes?
Oh, I agree. We will actually have these attorneys or CPAs come in our office and we'll do a joint meeting with them. Yeah.
Mike, thank you. Tate, my next question is for you, and it's from Keith in Woodbury. And Keith writes, we have a small mortgage on our house, and we're wondering if we should take the money out of our IRA and pay it off now in full, or just wait and pay it off gradually over the next 6.5 years.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Keith, for writing in, and congratulations on winding down on the mortgage. That's exciting. There's two schools of thought, obviously, when talking about paying off your mortgage. Talking about taking it out of your IRA, we now need to think about the tax implications of doing that, right? It's not just taking out and maybe you have $50,000 left on your mortgage. Well, now you're going to have to take out about $75,000 or $80,000 to get you to that $50,000 net to pay off that mortgage. The second school of thought to think about is assuming you took a 30-year mortgage out, you're now on the back end of the amortization schedule. You paid your interest front-loaded on the first 15 years. You're now on the back end of the 15 years paying mainly principal. So at this point, to pay off your mortgage, you're letting the bank win. So I probably would not recommend to pay your mortgage off and just pay it gradually over the next 6 years.
You know, this decision can be more emotional than logical.
For sure.
Right? I think there are some folks that say, hey, I want no debt whatsoever, almost regardless of consequence, well, to some degree. And so it's kind of like what's going to allow me to sleep at night is getting rid of this 6.5 years. And how often do we find, and I'll ask this to both of you, where, hey, the emotional part may take precedent over the logical part?
I would say I find that more often than not is that emotional, you lead with your emotions most of the time when it comes to your finances, especially debt, right? You want to get the debt paid off, but we try to bring them back down to earth, right? Clients in our office that come in, like Keith here, had a question about that. You want to center them and ground them, right? And say, it's not smart to do that. You want to make sure you're being smart with your money, especially going into retirement. You might as well keep the mortgage or paying the principal and use that money elsewhere to invest it. Maybe with your IRA, keep that money invested for you. So.
Thanks, Tate. Mike, my last question is for you, and it's from Carl in Hudson. And he writes, my attorney is giving me different advice from my current financial advisor. How do I know who to listen to?
Well, Carl, that's tough. I mean, who has your best interest, first of all? Is your current advisor a fiduciary? Is the attorney, is he managing money too? So you have to find out what's the hidden agenda. Maybe he has one, maybe he doesn't. The key is find out who is the fiduciary and what kind of investments is he recommending compared to the investments you have with the advisor. I would recommend getting a second opinion from an advisor outside of that and compare what the portfolios are. Is he really putting your best interest first? I think that's the thing that I'm hearing here in the voice here, or the letter written in. We don't know. We don't know. Is it a quick sale? Does he feel he's just trying to drive a wedge, unfortunately? There might not be anything wrong with your advisor. We see that sometimes.
Yeah, I'm going to say this question bothers me a little bit because if it was the other way around and the financial advisor was giving them legal advice, and do I take legal advice from my attorney or my advisor, I would say, well, the advisor is not an attorney. They're not. Right. That's not their area of expertise. You've gone to a financial advisor because their area of expertise is financial advice.
It sounds like he's meddling.
This is a question mark. Should I listen to my attorney about financial advice?
Yeah, it sounds like the attorney's meddling a little bit. You didn't go there for the financial advice, but he's just trying to drive a wedge in there.
But clearly, Mike, you're right. This is an area for a second opinion, an unbiased view, right, of what's actually going on.
I agree.
Mike, Tate, thank you so much. And if you have questions about, well, anything we spoke about here today, including someone maybe meddling in your retirement, hey, give us a call in the office. We'd love to help you out. Or you can go to our website. But more importantly, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
You're watching Retirement Reality Roadmap with Mike Koyanen.
Are you unleashing the possibilities of your assets in retirement? Hi, I'm Mike Koyanen of Principal Preservation Services, and we've been helping families with their retirement goals and dreams since 2014. We specialize in comprehensive wealth management strategies and retirement planning. Together, let's create a cohesive plan and maximize your assets in retirement. Call today or scan the QR code on the screen to set up your complimentary visit. Principal Preservation Services, where retirement dreams become reality.
Hi, and welcome to this week's Retirement Reality University. Mike, really important topic today. Why is limiting loss so important? So let me explain that a little bit. As you get closer to retirement or in retirement, some people still like to have risk. They're kind of chasing a big return.
Right.
But maybe, and we're going to talk about this right now, it's more important to protect your principal from a big loss than to chase that big gain. Fair statement?
Fair statement. So a lot of times when people come to my office, I usually ask them before I show them, this is a risk analysis software that I show on my monitor in the office. What is the most you're willing to take in a down market? What's your number? Is it 20%, 30%? What they usually say is, I don't want to lose a dime. And then we pull up how they're investing. So what we're showing here is, this is the S&P 500 over here. On this left side, this is the client's portfolio here on the right. So when the S&P 500 from a risk score from 1 to 100 is a 73. So it's right at that moderate aggressive number. That's the 500 plus companies that make up the S&P 500. Now when we input each individual ticker, whether it's a stock, a bond, mutual fund, whatever that might, ETF, the client's portfolio over here has a higher risk than the S&P 500. It came in at 78.
Is that on a scale of 1 to 100?
1 to 100.
So 100 means I have more risk, 1 less risk.
Exactly.
Is that, okay.
Right. So very similar to a client that came into my office here a few years ago, and I said, Steve, I'm just going to do this risk analysis software with your statements, input all those ticker symbols in there. He says, Mike, you don't have to do that because I already know I'm very conservative. I already looked at his statements. I know he wasn't conservative. I said, why do you say you're conservative? He says, well, right after the elections, I was very concerned, so I called my advisor up, said go ultra conservative on all my holdings. Well, I did the input. He was more aggressive than the S&P.
You know, it's funny because some of the names of various funds are the ultra conservative this fund or the conservative money manager this fund.
Right.
Like that, they'll have that or they'll allude to it, but when in fact it may not be.
May not be. And in his case, it wasn't. So when he came into the office and I did this analysis, very similar score to what we're seeing here, he was very upset. I said, well, here's the thing, Steve. He didn't listen to you, but the good thing is you made a lot of money. He says, I didn't need to make a lot of money. I'm well off without it. He goes, they can't listen to me. They're no longer my advisors anymore. So what we're looking here, we compare the portfolio to the S&P. Even though this has a higher risk score, it's not performing as good as the S&P, but very similar numbers if we have a phenomenal market like we did in 2013. But then what we happen down here? Everybody wants to look at the green, right? Everybody likes to look at the green, but when we look at the red, what if we have a down market like 2008? The S&P lost almost 37%. You're going to lose more than what the S&P 500 is.
You know, I think it's interesting because if you're watching today, I ask yourself this question. Are you a conservative investor? Are you a moderate? Are you aggressive? And where do you think your portfolio is? Because if, like you're saying, Mike, if you're conservative, but you're in something that is aggressive, this is not a match.
It's not
at
a
all.
match. Right. And we do a full risk analysis when you come in to find out where you should be investing. We'll show you how you're investing. Does that line up how you should be investing? So we can find some different portfolios that would be better fitting and build out that plan for you.
So let's talk about the discovery process. Because if I'm a doctor and you come in and see me, I'm not just going to have you come in and say, you need Crestor. Goodbye. See you later. No, we've got to get into here's the family and this and that. And let's do the blood markers and talk about all these different things. So I want you to take a moment. Somebody comes into the office, okay? What are we doing in the discovery process?
Yeah,
what are we doing that might be different than other advisors?
Well, I think a lot of advisors, you can go to most advisors and you can come in there with $500,000, they'll invest it that day. We will not. We will get a series of questions. We want to find out what your income is, when you're planning to retire, what's your goals, what's your spending habits, detailed spending habits, gather all the statements they might have and input that into the data for the next meeting. So that's a discovery meeting. And so we want to show you in that next meeting, the second meeting, which is called the analysis, to show you this is the path you're on. This is what you're doing without us. And are you going to have enough money? Are you going to run out of money before you run out of life? We hope not. We don't want you to be a burden to those kids either. And then we'll show you what we would do in that third meeting to give you a recommendation, a solution to let's extend the life of the money. There's a better way to, I hate to say it, skin a cat. It's a saying, but it's true. There's a better way to skin a cat when it comes to financial planning today.
You know, so it gets back to limiting the loss. And question. 10 people come in, 10 new faces you've never seen before. How many of them are in a situation where the risk that they have doesn't match their goal or what they want to accomplish, and they're not aware of it? And the reason I bring this up is, you know, I'm all about second set of eyes, second set of eyes, second set of eyes to look at what you're currently doing, because if it is in fact wrong, hey, I'm going to show you. This is 1, 2, 3 points that we think,
right,
you guys think, could be made better. Or you might just say, great job. Whoever your advisor is, they did a phenomenal job for you.
It's typically 9 out of 10 are not investing appropriately for their risk score. And even if they are at the same risk score they should be investing in, what we're finding is their rate of returns are not something to be proud of. When we look at this as kind of a projected average return of 6.5%, I think with the risk of an aggressive portfolio to get 6.5% return, I don't think that's very good. So I think you could do better with some different portfolio options.
Mike, thank you so much. If you want more information about anything we spoke about here today, hey, give us a call in the office or go to our website. And don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
You're watching Retirement Reality Roadmap with Mike Koyanen.
From my experience, many retirees keep too much of their assets in the stock market after they retire. A well-diversified retirement portfolio should have assets in each of the 3 different retirement stages. The youth stage, putting money into savings. The adult stage, putting money into growth investments. And when you reach that mature stage, you should transition from growing and risking to more protection and guarantees. If you aren't sure about your risk, call now or scan the QR code to get your custom retirement reality roadmap. There's no obligation and no cost if you have at least $250,000 saved for retirement. Here's what you'll get: a free report to sort through your current investment risks and fees, a tailored strategy to help protect your assets, a tax analysis to potentially reduce your tax liability, a custom income plan, and even a budget analysis if that's needed. Let us help you. Call now or scan the QR code on the screen to schedule your complimentary consultation. Principal Preservation Services, where retirement dreams become reality.
Hi, and welcome to this week's Financial True or False. Gentlemen, I've got some good questions this week. Mike, I will begin with you.
All right.
You can put off your RMDs past 73, true or false?
That is a big false. So the RMD dates have changed quite a bit. It used to be 70 and a half. You had to take out your required minimum distribution. Then they changed it to 72 with the first Secure Act. Then version 2 of the Secure Act came out. Then it's 73. But if you're not 73 by the year 2032, then it's 75. So there's some different ages in there. So it gets a little bit confusing. Make sure you're working with an advisor to help you with that. So, and you can postpone your very first RMD, only the very first, till April 1st of the next year. Not April 15th, but April 1st. But then you have to take out 2 that year. If you miss it, you get a 25% penalty, which used to be a 50% penalty. And they're so nice, they dropped it to 25. Still the highest penalty out there from the IRS. So, and there's one other thing here, Mark. There's a thing called a QLAC, a Qualified Longevity Annuity Contract. Per individual, you can put up to $200,000 aside into that if you want to postpone your RMDs as late as age 85. So it's not as well known out there, but you can postpone and make sure that maybe your beneficiaries will have to pay the taxes someday on those IRAs.
Gotcha. Joe, my next question is for you, and it is, out-of-pocket medical expenses are going up every year and could be over $100,000 over the course of one's retirement. True or false?
That is very true. It all, again, depends on your health as an individual. We've had cases in the office where we've had cases where they've spent over $150,000 in long-term care in 1 year alone.
Just on long-term care?
Yeah, so it's very much dependent, on your medical history itself. You do have some options in healthcare as far as whether you would choose a medical supplemental plan or a medical advantage plan. One thing I always push for clients in the office is just make sure you're covered for your lifestyle in retirement. Right. Because the last thing we want to see is you get in a situation where you have medical expenses that aren't covered because you just weren't properly insured.
We talk about this all the time, that number one is that income plan. You got to have the income plan put together. Arguably, that's number one. Then we talk about taxes and we talk about Social Security, but hey, what's your medical plan?
Right.
Because if we're going to just take national averages across the country, and if it's going to be, I've read it anywhere from $150,000 to $250,000 per couple of out-of-pocket. Where's that money going to come from, right, Joe?
Yeah.
How are you planning that into your plan? I know this is something that you guys do, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So we have long-term care policies we can look at. We have annuities with long-term care riders on them. All different types of investments that might fit into your plan to cover some of those, check marks.
You bring up an interesting point there as well, that the senior market and the products that are out there right now, because I think most people, and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong here, but they just think, well, there's long-term care insurance and that's it.
Right.
That there's no other way, and we all know long-term care insurance can be very, very expensive, but take a second and talk about some of the alternatives that are out there, because people are going to be listening today saying, hey, maybe my medical plan isn't really that great right now.
And a lot of people have just a bad taste in their mouth with long-term care because we've heard the stories where it's doubled and tripled in the cost of long-term care. So when we help people with our clients, if we go the long-term care route, return a premium. So you feel a lot better if you're going to put money into a long-term care plan. If you don't use it, that money goes to your beneficiaries. So it's not lost at all. But if you do need it, you're going to get 3, 4 times, maybe 5 times the value of what you put into it. So there's a lot of things you need to look at. There's different long-term care situations per individual, whether you have some health issues, you don't qualify for maybe a traditional long-term care plan, like a return to premium, but maybe like Joe had said, a contract, a long-term care annuity contract. As long as you're not in the nursing home, you qualify. And you could get up to 3 times the coverage of what you put into that plan. So there's things to look at and fitting for most people today. And before you had to qualify for a long-term care contract, maybe in your 50s, 40s or 50s. Today you can get it in your 60s or 70s.
Those are enormous, newer, they've been out for a bit,
Right.
products that are out there and available right now that people need to, hey, call the office.
Right.
Get the information you need. You know that's important to your overall plan. So, all right, Mike, my last question is for you, and it is, one bad year in retirement can have a dramatic effect on your retirement. True or false? One bad year.
That's it. Just like in 2008. I mean, we just had to go back to 2008. And what we said earlier before in a previous segment, your 401k became a 201k, right? And your house values might have dropped by a third or half as well. So that can just change when you get to retire. Some people are looking to retire. We have a 25, 35% drop in the market, and just say you lose majority of that, you might have to work another year, 2 or 3 years just to get your money back. So our tolerance for risk should be waning, right? We should be just putting our foot in the ground and said, we don't need to do this anymore. The fact is, they're not getting the options where they're at. They're not getting the options in their 401k plans, employer-sponsored plans. They're not getting the options from their advisor who just sold them a pile of investments 10, 12 years ago and seen them twice, right? The key is you need to work with somebody who does planning and can hold your hand through this process.
Mike, Joe, thanks so much. If you want information about any of these great topics we spoke about today, give us a call in the office. We'd love to start a conversation with you. Or you can go to our website. But most importantly, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
You're watching Retirement Reality Roadmap with Mike Koyanen.
Now more than ever, it's vitally important to review your current retirement plan and get an educated second opinion. Hi, I'm Mike Koyanen, and for many people close to or in retirement, this is a confusing time. As a local business here in the Twin Cities for over a decade, we have educated thousands of families on how to retire well through all market conditions. Let us help you. Call now or scan the QR code on the screen to schedule your complimentary consultation. Principal Preservation Services, where retirement dreams become reality.
And welcome back to Retirement Reality Radio with Mike Koyanen. Mike, really important topic today, and that's the emergency fund. Everyone knows we need to have a little money put away, right? Because the rainy day fund, things are going to happen. Let's start with what is an appropriate amount of money. And I like the way you put it, because there's one amount if you're working, and there's one amount, or not one amount, but a certain amount if you're retired.
Right. If you are working, we do recommend having 3 months up to 6 months of your expenses set aside in checking, savings, CDs, cash. Once the banks start reducing the interest rates on the savings account CDs, a lot of people are going to start sticking it back in the safe again. But while you're retired, 6 months to 12 months of your expenses set aside as well. Reason being, emergencies, car repair, medical expense, home repair, maybe just a family member in need. Last thing we want to have you to do is take money out of your IRAs, pay taxes on that money, or take out a 401k loan if you're still working. We've seen that. We go back to 2020, the people who had the biggest issues and who are getting, start losing their homes, get behind on their mortgage, was the people who didn't have these emergency funds, when they weren't considered an essential business or essential job.
Goodness, gosh, right.
They didn't have that. The average person doesn't even have $10,000 saved in their emergency fund. So we need to increase those values.
Mike, there's going to be a lot of people, there's peace of mind. They sleep well at night, that they're well beyond at the bank with that 12 months, that 6 to 12 months. It just makes them feel good,
right,
that they're liquid. And I get it, right? God forbid something happened, I got a whole bunch of money at the bank. Let's talk about the good and the bad of that for a minute, because clearly there's logic and there's emotion, and you've got to take both into account. And I'm sure when you have couples come into the office, maybe one's more logical, maybe one's more emotional, or maybe they're both logical, maybe they're both emotional, who knows. But when you start getting too much money at the bank, right, there are probably better alternatives for that. Fair statement?
Fair statement. We have to look at what is the need for those dollars, first of all. If there's a short-term need, or maybe somebody's looking to buy a piece of land, or they're looking to, buy another home, it's okay to have that money
Buy
sitting
a
in
boat, take a long
Well, maybe.
vacation.
Maybe if it fits your plan, great. Maybe that's the case as well. But we have clients that maybe sold a piece of property, but they're going to buy something else. The best place to have that right now is sitting in cash somewhere in the bank. We don't want to invest it, and we don't know if the markets are going to go backwards. The last thing we want to do is lose some of those dollars. But if this is long-term money, and I understand there's that peace of mind element with it. One spouse maybe likes the safety, the other spouse wants to keep it in the market, and there's that little battle going on there. But having too much, you have inflationary losses. So when we look at inflation, just a couple of years ago, it was around 8%. And if you're making 3% at the bank today, or maybe 4%, you're losing money. You're losing 4%. You have 100,000, you just lost $4,000, and just compound that by whatever else you put into that account. So I've seen people have over $1 million in their savings accounts. At some of these big banks that pay no interest, we're talking about 0.1%, 0.2%, and now that's a big problem. So there's other places to put that money outside of the bank. So when we talk about safety and security, with better returns, we have those options.
So years ago, I was reading, not that long ago, maybe 2+ years ago, the headline of the article, Mike, was "Inflation, the Silent Killer," for retirees. Because, your money today, your $100,000, 10 years from now, is not going to have the purchase power of $100,000. In fact, the theory is that it's half, right? Or maybe 3/4. I can't remember the exact number. So you have to be aware of this if you're keeping a lot of money in there and that purchase power significantly going down. And I think one of the powerful ways to express this, and you probably do this because you set up actual plans for people with their money. Do you have that inflation built into the plan? Is that COLA, cost of living adjustment?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, we run the 100-year average roughly about 3.3%. And we can change that every year. Maybe we have a high, like a couple of years ago, we had some very high inflation, so we increase that cost of living adjustment higher at that time. But we will factor that. So the key is when we're parting, this is just one of the buckets that we're talking about of the 3 buckets that we utilize with our clients inside of the plan, which is a 35, 40-page report. We're going to show you what the cost of living adjustment is, what your expenses. We're also going to build up the interest rate. So as the interest rate environment is starting to decrease on the safe bucket of money, we can factor that in as well. Is that going to impact your retirement? When you have too much in that yellow bucket, this emergency fund bucket, unfortunately, it's not going to keep up with inflation, and we're going to see the numbers dwindle a little bit.
Great topics today, Mike. And if you want more information about anything we spoke about here today, hey, give us a call in the office, man. Let's start that conversation, and let's help you and your family get to your retirement goals and dreams. You're listening to Retirement Reality Radio with Mike Koyanen.
You're watching Retirement Reality Roadmap with Mike Koyanen.
Thanks for watching this week's show.
And if you want more information regarding anything we spoke about here today, hey, give us a call in the office or go to our website.
Principal Preservation Services, where retirement dreams become a reality.
The preceding program is sponsored by Principal Preservation Services, LLC.